Hello everyone, I'm Rashmi and today we have this very interesting talk on a very interesting topic, and this is for those viewers who are all planning to do an MBA after their graduation. So I have my own student, an alumni of Sahyadri. He studied in Sahyadri College of Engineering and Management in the year 2015. Took up electronics and communication, got placed in Infosys and TCS, joined TCS and worked there for around 30 months, and then pursued his IIM in Nagpur. So we have Akash K Sugunan with us. So Akash, very happy to see you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, I'm meeting you after such a long time. But then
I know, it's been 5 long.
even though we were connected, and Akash was a very bright boy, and he was a part of the placement department, so that's why I know Akash so well. And so when he was telling that he was leaving, planning to do his planning to write cat and get into an IM, I was actually very happy, a little surprised also, because he actually had got into a very good job. So Akash, my first question to you is what the viewers always have, the engineering students have in mind. I mean, should I do an IIM, or who should do an IIM, especially if they're coming from an engineering background?
Okay. Ma'am, during my graduation days, even I was a bit skeptic about if I have to continue pursuing my career in technical domain or should I actually take a shift towards management. But what all matters is at the end of the day, where do you see yourself, right? So I would always suggest the students to understand where they belong because unless until you understand that okay, I'm a very good technical person or I'm a better management person, you will not be able to make this choice very easily. So my advice would be, or probably what I did was once I started working, when I started getting into the functional aspect of things, I understood that okay, probably my contribution in the area of management would be a little better in terms of my contribution as well. And rather than being a technical person, I believed or I felt that I could be a better management person. So this choice is always difficult. Some people think okay, some people have this mentality that okay, I'm going to be I want to do an MBA or I want to be a management person. But what I would suggest is get into it, have a flavor of both because once you start working, you'll see both the technical side as well as the functional side of things, and that is where you can actually make a choice. So probably once you start working is where you can actually decide if you want to do an MBA or if you want to stick to technical field.
I would want to also check with you. So, I mean, was MBA any time there in your mind when you were doing engineering, or was it once you joined the organization and started working for a year or so that you decided?
Okay, for me, ma'am, I always had an inclination towards MBA because I had a couple of influences from my family and my family friends as well. So I
Mm-hmm.
was always a little inclined towards MBA because I remember one instance when one of our faculties in engineering asked, "How many of you want to go for an MBA versus how many of you want to go for an MTech?" I was the only one in the class to raise hands for an MBA, right? So I
Okay.
really remember this instance, but I was very confused once I started working because I used to love what I was doing there. So I was actually a little confused about it. But then actually this real decision of doing an MBA came after my 1 year of work experience. Once I started getting a flavor of both technical as well as management side, that is when I decided, okay, that is my cup of tea, and maybe I'll be able to perform better there. So I had this in my mind. I had this during my engineering days, but then the actual decision came up after 1 year.
Okay. And so, what, because many times students, they don't get a job and then they think, okay, let me do an MBA. So, but if you want to do an MBA, you should actually be doing in a very good college. You got it in through,
Exactly.
yes, in an IIM Nagpur. And so you tell me how long, I mean, if someone is planning to do an MBA,
Mhm.
how should they choose the college, and what sort of preparation does it go, and how long does it take for one to actually prepare?
Okay, ma'am, CAT preparation is actually very hectic. So, one reason why people actually start preparing for CAT without having a job is probably it becomes very difficult to balance your work as well as your academics once you start joining, right?
Uh-huh.
So, one mistake that I did and I wish I knew was I should have gone for the CAT preparation coaching during the last year of engineering. So that is something that I always tell my juniors and my friends. If you're actually looking forward to do an MBA, please go for the coaching, which is an offline model or an online model, doesn't matter, at the last year of your engineering, because that is one period where you don't have much academics in place. You have almost a half day free at the second half, and you can actually utilize that time to brush up your basics, which will also help you during your campus placements. Because aptitude is one area which is common for both technical as well as management side, and that is exactly how you have to start preparing. In case if you ask me about the time duration that is needed, it depends, ma'am, very honestly, because probably you might be very lucky enough and you might be very smart enough to crack it on the first attempt. I have taken two attempts. I wrote CAT twice. The first time I could not get through an IIM, so I decided to repeat it. I cracked it on the second attempt. So if what I did was, once I was always prepared for the technical part during my engineering days as well. I gave a lot of focus on aptitude because I knew that it will help me during my interviews in as well interviews in graduation as well as my MBA preparation. So after that, I took up an offline coaching model. I did join an online coaching center where I dedicatedly studied for almost 2 hours every day, and weekends I spent around 6 to 8 hours again. So it is pretty hectic. I'm not saying that it's going to be an easy journey once you start working, but it's all about how much you really want to do it. So if it's possible, once you start working, it becomes a little difficult. So what I would suggest is to have a basic foundation set during the last year of engineering, and that will definitely help you guys to pursue this exam.
All right. Akshay, Akash, you tell me this. Now, 1 year, the last year you said to prepare, you start preparing. But do you think it's good enough? Another thing is you said, the aptitude, anyway, for engineering, you do prepare. So, how difficult is CAT aptitude compared to your campus recruitment aptitude?
Ma'am, one startling difference would be in our graduation days, in our graduation interviews, you put a lot of focus on the numbers part, right? You put a lot of focus on the quant part. You get evaluated on your communication skills, which is very important. But in CAT exam, what happens is you have a dedicated section for Q and quants, you have a dedicated section for data interpretation, you have a dedicated section for verbal. So two areas where people don't really focus much is on the DI and the verbal ability part. So quant, the basics of quant is almost you get a foundation set in the engineering interview aptitude preparation, but CAT level it's a little more difficult, and that is actually true. People say the CAT exam is more difficult compared to the other exams because of these two sections primarily: data interpretation and verbal ability. So those two sections are completely different. You may not be able to just go write a CAT exam because you have already prepared for graduation interviews, because they put a lot of focus on quant, whereas CAT puts a lot of focus on DI and VA as well, verbal ability as well. So that is the major difference that you have across the sections.
All right. And, verbal ability, many times engineering students are not really that great. And
Exactly.
that is the
Yes.
section. Even in the campus recruitment, when it comes to verbal, they lose out. So, how did you
Right.
prepare? And what would be your tip for
Right. Ma'am,
students?
okay. So, ma'am, verbal ability, as you rightly said, it's one of the major focus points for most of the engineering graduates out there. So, I was lucky enough to get this insight through one of my friends who was already pursuing an MBA, and I really put a lot of focus on communication during my engineering days as well. What is more important is you might have the content inside you, but what is more important is how do you articulate it, or how are you able to present it in front of somebody in a very simple and easy way. So communication is one very important factor, irrespective of wherever you go. Even if you want to excel in a company, or even if you want to get into a good campus placements and then excel your career there, or even if you want to go pursue higher studies, be it in India or be it abroad, communication plays a very important role. So what I suggest, or what I always advocated, was talk to a lot of people, because communication can only improve once you start talking. Apart from that, verbal ability depends a lot on your vocabulary as well. So reading is one habit that most of us don't have, even be it for textbooks, or even I never used to read textbooks and stuff. But start reading a lot of newspapers. Editorials will definitely help. Start reading a lot of magazines, especially if you can actually get acquainted to the business terms, right? As engineers, one of the major difficult things that I had was I was not able to get adjusted to the business terms that is there. So whenever somebody talked about economics, I always got confused, right? So that is one area where people can actually start reading, not just into the technology aspect of it, but also try to get into the functional side of business. To read a lot in terms of functionalities or probably domains and stuff. So that is one thing that can do. So one thing that would definitely help is communicate a lot, talk to a lot of people, participate in a lot of programs, get rid of your stage fear, make have a very solid confidence saying that okay, I will be able to communicate whatever I'm trying to tell you, and then read a lot. That would help. Ma'am, just a second. I think there is some disturbance
Yeah.
in between, right? You're hearing a voice, right?
I have been hearing that voice for a long time, Akash.
Yeah,
And I
it is
think
there.
Vishnu has told it's okay.
All right, no problem. Hello, ma'am. I think your video is stuck. Yeah, I think you're good. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So Akash, my this thing is so. What can you recommend a few magazines and which paper? Because they say Hindu is always very good, especially the editorial. And any other magazine or a newspaper that you would.
Ma'am, Hindu is very good in fact, but Hindu is a little difficult. To start with, you can start with any national daily, that won't be a problem. Editorial sections in Hindu is always pretty difficult to understand. So, any newspaper would do. Business Standard magazines or probably Economic Times magazine would help. But if you really have to get into the, if you have to get into the understanding part of it, you need some more effort in between. So, probably what I did was, there is this website called as Swanomics. So
What is it?
Swanomics is Swanomics.
Can you spell it out?
Swaminomics, right?
Okay.
So Swanomics is basically, Ankaleshwara Swaminathan Iyer, who is already an editor in, I think one of the leading newspapers. So what he does is he tries to bring it down, or he tries to explain stuff in a much simpler way, whatever is given in the current editorial. So such websites would definitely help. There are other numerous websites which give you basic business insights in a very, very simple way. So rather than always focusing on newspapers, websites like this can also be very helpful in terms of MBA aspirants. Because if you directly get into Hindu editorial, it becomes very difficult to understand. Take a lot of time to understand the comprehend stuff. That is one
Mhm.
problem.
Okay. And one more thing is, you have gone to the this thing CAT with work experience, and usually when students apply, what is the ratio? Is it difficult for students to actually get it if they don't have work experience? Because when it comes to work experience, I think a lot of questions then are based from your work, which you are very,
Exactly. Exactly.
it's easier for you to answer. So, what would you say? Let them work, and or let them. I mean, which would be more practical, and where is the chance of getting it more? Hearing
Ma'am,
it more.
different colleges have got different weightages for work experience. All right. So some colleges prefer freshers, some colleges prefer people with work experience. So I went to a college which I went to IIM Nagpur, which preferred work experience people a little more. So my batch was largely consisted of work experience people. Uh, what I would practically advise is to actually have some work experience before you go and do in an MBA, because it's not because of easy way of getting it, or it's more difficult to get it in. But what actually matters is when you actually go participate in a B school, you are trying to learn from your peer group as well, right? So peer learning is probably one of the most important things that I have taken away from my education. So what happens is, the moment you have a work experience, the moment you deal with subjects, or the moment you deal with some cases, you already know what is happening in the industry. You already know that, okay, I come from retail industry, so I know, okay, this is exactly what is happening there. So tomorrow, when you have a class discussion or when you have a group discussion, it becomes very easy for you, or it becomes very important for you to put in points and relate to whatever you're saying. So work experience actually broadens up it gives you a lot more perspective of what exactly is happening in the industry, and that is very critical. If you ask me what is more important for an MBA graduate, it's almost this, right? You should be able to see things from a multiple point of view. You should have a very broad dimension or idea of what is happening in one particular domain. So work experience will open that up for you. Being a fresher and doing an MBA is not a problem at all. I will still say this, but I will always prefer somebody to have a flavor of work experience and then go to an MBA, because that adds a lot of value to your education. Because you will be able to relate to a lot more concepts much clearly than if you go in as a fresher and learn. Especially if you are an engineering graduate, because you don't really have a business background, right? So for engineers, I would always recommend have a work experience and then do an MBA.
Okay. Now MBAs are pretty expensive, Akash. So how much does it roughly cost? And is it worth it? Because and how do you fund it? I mean, do you take a loan or how is it?
Yeah. So MBAs are usually expensive, very rightly said. So if you talk in terms of IIMs, it ranges from a bracket of say 10, 12 lakhs to even 25 lakhs plus, right? So again, that depends on the fee structure of the college. Some colleges charge as high as 23, 24 lakhs, whereas some IIMs charge even close to 10, 12 or 13 lakhs for 2 years, basically. So how do you fund it? Is, ma'am, funding is not a problem at all, because the moment you get an admission to an IIM, the moment you step inside the campus, you have banks waiting there asking you if you want your loan. So that is one major difference that I found. When I had to fund my education loan for engineering, I had to run behind banks. But then when I had to, get a education loan for an MBA, they were running behind me. So
Yeah.
funding is not a problem at all. You will have enough number of options for loans. Once you step inside the campus itself will have at least 5 to 6 banks which are ready to give you loans on the spot. So funding is not a problem at all. ROI wise, ma'am, I think it's worth it in the end, because even if I am not somebody who always believes in CTC is going to define your ROI. I always believe that it's going to be a long-term goal that is there in front of you, which is going to give you back, right? So ROI wise, be it any college, if you're going to a good college, if you're going to the top B school in the country, it's definitely worth it, irrespective of wherever you're going, because you're carrying with you a legacy of a brand, especially, and also a domain knowledge, and academic wise, you're very solid and strong. So you will be able to advocate and face any adversity or any business problem in life. So ROI wise, I have no doubts. If you get into an IIM, it's worth it. Or if you get into any top B school, there are very good B school private colleges in the country. If you get into a good B school, it's worth it. Don't worry about the fees.
What is the average package, Akash, that people get? And does everyone get a job also?
Yes, ma'am. So again, that is very subjective. I'm not very sure of every college in the country.
Yeah.
At least wherever I know, wherever I am coming from, 100% placements are not. It's not a false promise. Wherever colleges say that it's 100%, it's 100%, because most of the reports, or especially in my college, the reports are audited. So you cannot fudge the numbers, or you cannot fudge the figures and stats, right? So placements are not a problem, because one of the major things that I remember from my 2 years of MBA was the first day my professor told me that IIMs don't guarantee employment. IIMs make you employable, right? So that is true for any B school in the country. So you get to learn from the best professors in the country, irrespective of whichever college you go for. And you also have a very good peer learning opportunity, because your friends and colleagues come from different diverse backgrounds as ever. So you really become a different person at the end of second year. You really become somebody that who is very very comfortable talking to people, who is very comfortable addressing a crowd, who is so diplomatic, or who is seeing a problem from multiple dimensions. So probably, even now you might be able to see a small difference in me, wherein I've become more confident than what I was 2 3 years back, right?
No, a huge
So
difference, Akash. I mean,
exactly.
I
So
really can see the difference. Yeah,
yeah,
for the
that's
better.
the major thing. Yeah, thank you, ma'am. So that's the whole point. IIMs make you a different person altogether for a better reason. So average package wise, it again depends on the college. Some colleges have it around 12 lakhs. Some colleges have it around 24 lakhs. So that also depends on the kind of college that you get into. So probably exact numbers and figures would be always published in the placement reports that are there in the website. So one thing that you really have to make sure is, please do thorough research about one particular college, or one particular any college that you go, or any specialization that you want to do before getting in, because fees varies from college to college. Final placements varies from college to college. Batch size varies from college to college. Some colleges are known for its specialization in so and so field. Some college always has an upper hand in terms of operations. Some people will always have an upper hand in terms of marketing, and etc. So that is something that, as a candidate, we always have to do thorough research about before joining somewhere. You should always understand that, okay, you should always know what you're signing up for, right? So that is one major input that I would give. Thorough research about one college is important.
All right. And Akash, how important is academics? I mean, because people only focus on the test and all that to get in. But do you feel that
Right.
academics is equally important to get in?
Right, ma'am. It's a very good question. In fact, academics is one area which is majorly neglected by a lot of people, right? So, one major difference is, if you are a fresher who's going to do an MBA, you can expect a lot of questions from your academics, right? So, academics are always important, but I did not have a very stellar academic. So, how I compensated it was with my work experience. So, the more you talk about your work, or the more talking points you have in terms of your work experience, your interview will actually drive in that way. The moment you don't have much talking points, that is when the interviewers start getting into the academic part of it, right? So if most probably what happens is, in terms of a work experience candidate, the interview actually drives towards work experience. But in case if it's a fresher, you should be always having one or two, at least 3 4 subjects which are very strong. So academics play an important part. It also plays an important part during the shortlisting criteria, because many colleges have got separate work experience, weightage for work experience, separate weightage for academics. So academics are important. Any day academics are important. But what I have to say is, in case if you don't have one, this is something that you can't change, right? So you always have to compensate this with something bigger than bigger in front of you. So work experience actually helped me out in this particular area. But academics, yes, are very important, because the concepts may not be the concepts, but to get into a college, this is very important. I'm
Yeah.
just talking in terms of MBA interviews, man. I'm not talking after MBA. This is just for
Yeah, yeah.
MBA.
Yes. And Akash, what are the different specializations? Because usually people are only used to four specializations. So MBA, I mean, how many? I mean, on an average, how many specializations are there, and
Ma'am,
which are the very prominent ones which engineers usually take up?
Yeah, so ma'am, if you talk about specialization, predominantly the major ones are marketing, strategy, marketing, finance, operations, analytics, HR, and strategy. So these six are the predominantly the major ones that are there. Engineers always tend to have a little bit of more interest towards analytics because they're already used to numbers there. So that is one area that I see a lot of people actually feeling a lot of interest towards. But other than that, it's common. I mean, you always take subjects or you always take specializations after your first year. So just like in engineering, we have been taught we are taught all the domains in equal. I mean, we have subjects from all the domains in first year, where you get a flavor of all the domains of MBA, and then you get to choose a specialization. The whole idea is to make you a T-shaped manager. So when I say T-shaped manager, it's a jack of all trades and master of one. So you need to have a flavor of all the domains, but you should be specialized in one particular domain. So that is how MBA works. But predominantly these six are the specializations that are there, and it's completely dependent on the student's interest. If there is 100 people who are opting in for marketing, you will still have 100. All the 100 will get an option to set for marketing specialization. So it's not restricted much. Most of the times, everybody gets to choose their specialization.
Okay. And you have taken marketing as a specialization. So this is of interest because usually engineers are averse to marketing. So actually, what made you choose marketing, and why do you think that it's a great specialization?
Ma'am, when I was working with TCS, I worked with lifestyle. So my domain was retail and e-commerce. So I always wanted to get into the retail and e-commerce space. That is, I knew that I belonged there because functionality-wise, I really loved what is being done there. So I was pretty sure that I would end up or I would take up a marketing specialization. Also, I feel a lot confident when I deal with people, right? So that is one area that I have been continuously working upon, and couple of positions of responsibilities that have helped. Especially that is another point that I would really want to emphasize on. If you're actually looking forward to do an MBA, please ensure that you participate in as many number of extracurricular activities as possible. Also, try to be a part of the key positions in college, right? So this are called as positions of responsibility, PORs, which are very, very important. Especially if I have to talk about myself, my position of responsibility when I was working in the placement team with you, it actually helped me a lot, especially to get into the placement committee at IIM Nagpur as well. Plus the way of dealing with people, the way of talking to HRs, your negotiation skills, your communication skills, your coordination skills, the way you have to plan and organize stuff, everything actually plays a lot more important, right? So I always wanted to be somebody who is interacting with a lot of people, getting things done, talking to people, on the communication part of it, basically. Even if you talk about the business, the communication part of it. So that is why I was always inclined towards marketing. But majority of this was because of the retail experience that I come from, and that is the reason why I got into this. Marketing is always like an evergreen field, man. I mean, you don't see much engineers getting into it, but then it's something that if you're very lively and very active, and if you want to be like that, that is one nice place for you, is what I feel.
Okay. And finally, Akash, any message for the juniors and for the students who are aspiring to get into MBA?
Okay, ma'am, message. I think I've given a lot of inputs
Yeah, or any
during the last
tips?
20-25 minutes. Yeah, so what I would finally like to conclude would be, guys, it's very important to have a goal. Probably at the end of this last year, at least you should have an inclination of probably, what exactly do you want to do in the future. If you even think of doing an MBA, or if you even think of doing a GRE or a GMAT, please start preparing for it, because once you start working, things are going to change. Things are not going to be so easy. So you should always have your foundation and the base set before you even start working. Especially during this time, probably a lot of things are getting delayed and joining letters might be delayed. So you get some more lead time. Try to utilize it as an opportunity. Don't think that okay, COVID has taken away a lot of my time. Just take it as an opportunity to start preparing for whatever you really want to do. Work experience will really help. It really helps especially in terms of an MBA, because it gives you a very different viewpoint of things. But at the same time, a fresher can also look into an MBA option. That is completely okay. But what I would completely emphasize is to have a goal, to have a very clear idea of what really you want to do in life, because that really helps. If you go into a particular domain without having much clarity, that may not really benefit you in the long run. So it's very important to have a goal and strive for it, work hard for it. It might look difficult, it might look very difficult in the beginning, but it's at the end, I'll tell you, it's all worth it. So it's very important to do this. This is one thing that I would, as a message, I would have for all my juniors out there. Yeah, ma'am, I would also say this. I will be very happy to help and guide people if they need anything. So probably I can just give you my LinkedIn contacts below. Probably they can feel free to reach
Oh,
out to me
wow.
in case of any guidance.
Yeah, so you can just share it to me. I'll add it in the description then. Yeah. So thank you, Akash, so much, and I
Thank
wish
you,
you
ma'am.
all the best. Do well. And the
Thank
viewers,
you
I
so
hope
much,
you
ma'am.
found this informative. And if you like it, do subscribe, leave your comments, and share. Thank you so much.